The Grand Council Chamber of the Galactic Empire stretched before Teo like an endless canyon of power and ancient authority. Massive crystal pillars rose from the floor, each one thick as a building and glowing with the energy of 1,000 suns. The walls curved upward into darkness, and floating platforms held the representatives of 100 different worlds. Some of these beings looked almost human. Others had forms that seemed to bend the laws of nature itself. Teo stood alone in the center of the chamber. He was a small figure in that vast space, a human from a planet that most of the galaxy did not even know existed until 3 years ago. His dark suit was simple and clean. His hair was neatly combed. To anyone watching, he looked calm, but he could feel the weight of 1,000 alien eyes upon him. Eyes that burned with anger, curiosity, hunger, and contempt. The Empress Zara sat at the highest point of the chamber. She was a Vexithari, a species that had conquered more worlds than most civilizations had ever discovered. Her body was long and sharp, like a blade made of silver and shadow. Her eyes were ancient and cold, older than the earth itself. She had ruled for 500 years without challenge. Until now. Ambassador Teo of Earth. Zara's voice echoed through the chamber like the sound of mountains breaking. You stand here as the representative of a species we did not know existed 1,000 days ago. A species that has proven itself to be problematic. Teo did not move. He did not flinch. He simply waited for her to continue. Your people have violated treaty laws. Your ships have entered Imperial space without permission. Your scientists have conducted experiments that we have forbidden. Most insulting of all, your species has refused to accept the natural order of the galaxy. Around the chamber, other alien leaders began to speak. A Quilac diplomat with 4 arms crossed them over his chest and made a sound like breaking glass. A crystalline being that was mostly transparent vibrated with what might have been anger or might have been laughter. The message was clear. Earth had made enemies, powerful enemies, the kind of enemies that could destroy an entire civilization with a single command. Zara raised one long hand. The chamber fell silent. Therefore, the Galactic Empire has made its decision. We declare war on humanity. You have 30 rotations to surrender all territories, all resources, and all advanced technology. If you do not obey, we will erase your species from existence. We will break your planets into dust. We will make it so that your world never existed, that no one will remember your names. This is the judgment of the Empire. This is the word of the Empress. The silence that followed was complete. Even the distant hum of the chamber's power system seemed to fade away. Teo could hear his own heartbeat, steady and slow. Every diplomat, every advisor, every being in the chamber waited for Teo's response. They expected him to beg. They expected him to cry. They expected him to fall to his knees and plead for mercy. After all, he was just a human. Humans were weak. Humans were small. Humans had no place among the great powers of the galaxy. Instead, Teo checked his chronometer. It was a simple gesture. He looked at the small device on his wrist, noted the time, and then looked back up at the Empress. The movement was so casual, so ordinary, that it took a moment for anyone to understand what had just happened. Before or after lunch? Teo asked. His voice was calm and gentle, like a teacher speaking to a student. Because I have a meeting at the diplomatic station at midday, I cannot miss it. It would be very rude. The chamber erupted, not in anger but in confusion. Alien beings turned to face each other. Some made sounds that might have been laughter. Others vibrated with what could only be described as shock. No one had ever responded to a declaration of war like this. No one had ever been so casual about their own extinction. Empress Zara rose from her throne. Her form seemed to grow larger, more threatening. You mock us, human? Not at all, Teo said. He smiled, just a small smile, the kind a person might give when they were thinking of something pleasant. I am simply being practical. You have given humanity 30 rotations to surrender. That is approximately 1,000 hours. I would like to use my time well, but my lunch appointment is important. My people are waiting for me, so I ask again, with respect. Would you prefer that we discuss this matter before lunch or after lunch? The Empress stared down at him. Her cold eyes narrowed. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. In that moment, something shifted in the chamber. It was a small thing, barely noticeable, but it was there. In that moment, the Empress realized that she did not understand this human. In that moment, the natural order of the galaxy cracked, just slightly. You will receive your answer, Zara said slowly. You have 30 rotations. Teo bowed politely. Thank you, Empress. That gives us ample time. He turned and walked toward the exit of the chamber. His footsteps echoed in the vast space. Behind him, 1,000 alien voices began to whisper and debate. What was Earth? How had humanity become so confident? How had a single human just survived an encounter that should have killed him 1,000 times over? Teo did not look back. He simply walked forward, steady and sure, toward the door and toward his lunch appointment. As he walked, he allowed himself a small smile. The first part of the plan had worked perfectly. The Galactic Empire had shown its cards. They had declared war in public. In front of 100 different species, they had proclaimed their absolute power, and humanity had asked about lunch. By the time Teo reached the docking bay, word had already begun to spread. The human ambassador had not been intimidated. The human ambassador had not begged. The human ambassador had treated the Empress's declaration of war like an inconvenient interruption to his schedule. It was a small thing. But in the galaxy of the powerful, small things sometimes changed everything. Teo stepped into his shuttle. The doors closed behind him. As the ship lifted off from the station and began its journey back to Earth's orbital base, he watched the Galactic Empire grow smaller behind him. Somewhere in that vast network of ships and stations and worlds, powerful beings were asking questions. They were wondering. They were doubting. And that, Teo thought, was exactly how you started a revolution. The observation deck of Earth's orbital station hung in the darkness of space like a small jewel surrounded by infinite black. Stars shone in every direction, cold and distant and uncaring. Below, the planet Earth rotated slowly, beautiful and blue and fragile. It had taken 5,000 years for human civilization to reach this point, and it had taken only a few minutes for the Galactic Empire to threaten to destroy it all. Teo sat at a long table, a sandwich in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. The sandwich was simple, with bread and cheese and vegetables. Nothing special. But it was real food from a real world, and it grounded him. Around him sat the most important people in Earth's government and military. Their faces were tense. Their eyes were afraid. They had all heard the news from the Grand Council. They all knew what was coming. Dr. Haiwan stood at the head of the table. She was 53 years old, with short gray hair and the tired eyes of someone who had spent the last decade working on problems that everyone else said were impossible. She held a datapad in her hands, and her hands were shaking slightly as she raised it. The Empress's declaration has been broadcast across the galaxy, Haiwan said. Every major power has heard it. The media is already speculating about Earth's collapse. We have approximately 30 rotations, which translates to about 30 of our days, before they expect us to surrender. Commander Minseo sat to Teo's left. She was a tall woman with sharp features and the bearing of someone who had spent her entire life preparing for war. She had been the first human to ever command a military force in space. She had only been in that position for 6 months. Now suddenly, The weight of human survival rested on her shoulders. "Our military forces are almost nothing compared to the Empire," Minseo said. "We have 12 heavy cruisers, 40 fighter craft, and some defensive platforms around major colonies. The Empire has thousands of ships. If they attack, we cannot win through military force alone." Teo took a bite of his sandwich and chewed slowly. Then he turned to look at Dr. Hai Wan. "Tell them," he said simply. "Tell them what you showed me last week. Tell them about the breakthrough." The room became very quiet. Everyone turned to look at Dr. Hai Wan. She took a deep breath and activated her data pad. Images began to appear in the air above the table. They showed complex mathematical equations, vast structures, and patterns of energy that seemed to defy the laws of physics. "For 10 years, we have been working on a propulsion system," Haiwan began. "Every major scientific body in the galaxy said it was impossible. They said our understanding of physics was wrong. They said we were wasting time on a dream." She paused and looked directly at each person in the room. "They were wrong. We have created a drive system that can move a ship faster than anything in the galaxy has ever moved before. We have tested it successfully 3 times. We have a working prototype that can be scaled up to military ships." The people around the table sat forward. Suddenly, the tension in the room changed. It was no longer purely fear. Now, there was hope. "How much faster?" asked General Park, the head of Earth's strategic command. 200 times faster than the fastest Imperial ship," Haywan said quietly. "It allows a ship to change direction instantly. It allows for tactical positioning that the current galactic naval doctrine cannot handle. Essentially, it makes every other ship in the galaxy obsolete." Teo set down his coffee cup. "So we are not weak," he said. "We simply made them think we were weak. We let them believe we were a young species with no advanced technology. We sent them our basic ships and let them analyze our civilian transports. And while they were looking at those, Dr. Hei-Wan and her team were building something they could never have imagined." Min Seo leaned back in her chair. A slow smile spread across her face. "You want them to attack?" she said. It was not a question. "I want them to feel confident," Teo corrected. "I want them to believe they are going to easily defeat humanity. I want them to spread their forces thin because they believe the victory is already assured. And then, when they attack, we will show them what we really are." General Park stood up and began to pace. "This changes everything," he muttered. "If the Empress thinks Earth is weak, she will commit ships to this conquest. She will leave other parts of her empire vulnerable. She will believe that humanity cannot possibly hurt her." "Exactly," Teo said. "The Galactic Empire has been built on fear and superiority. The Empress has ruled for 500 years because everyone believes she is unbeatable. But that belief is fragile. It is like a glass that looks solid, but will shatter if you tap it the right way." A younger officer, Lieutenant Ji Woo, stood up. She was tall and thin and had the intense eyes of someone who spent most of her time looking at screens and reading secret documents. She was one of Earth's best intelligence officers, though most of the galaxy did not even know that Earth had an intelligence service. "If we show them our technology too early, they will adjust," Ji Woo said. "They will study it. They will find a way to defend against it." "Which is why we show it to them when there is no time for adjustment," Teo said. "We show it to them in battle. We show it to them when they are fully committed, and by then, it will be too late." Hei-Wan added more data to the display. It showed the Empire's fleet movements, their supply lines, their military bases. The Empress's forces are spread across 12 different star systems. To gather enough ships to truly threaten Earth, she will have to leave other areas vulnerable, and there are other species in the galaxy who are not happy with her rule. There are species who have been conquered and enslaved. If we can show them that the Empire is not invincible, they might rise up. Teo finished his coffee. "So here is what we will do. We will tell the Empress that we wish to negotiate. We will seem desperate and afraid. We will offer small concessions and negotiate slowly. Meanwhile, Dr. Haywan will prepare more of the new ships. Commander Mincio will train our pilots to fight with unconventional tactics, and Lieutenant Jiwoo will begin to make contact with the other species who might wish to see the Empire fall. He stood up and looked out at the stars beyond the window. Earth hung below them, spinning slowly, completely unaware of what was happening far above its atmosphere. The Galactic Empire has ruled for 10,000 years because they made everyone believe they were unstoppable. Teo said quietly, "We are going to show the galaxy that they were wrong. We are going to show them that there is a better way. And we are going to do it not because we are stronger, but because we think differently, because we are willing to take risks. Because we understand something that all the old powers have forgotten, that unity and hope are stronger than fear." Minseo smiled. "When do we start?" "We already have," Teo said. "I have already sent our response to the Empress. We have asked for a negotiation meeting. In 7 days we begin the real game." Outside, in the darkness of space, the stars continued to shine, indifferent to the plans of humans and aliens and empires. But in that moment, on that small orbital station, something important had shifted. Humanity was no longer simply fighting for survival. Humanity was fighting to change the galaxy itself. And change, Teo knew, was the one thing that the old powers could never be truly prepared for. The negotiation chambers of the neutral station Meridian 7 were designed to seem fair and balanced to all parties. The room was circular, with no head table and no position of honor. Comfortable chairs lined the walls at equal distances from each other. Windows looked out into the vast emptiness of space, reminding all who entered that this station belonged to no one government, no single empire, no individual species. But nothing was truly neutral when the Galactic Empire attended. Imperial ships filled the space around the station, massive warships that looked like floating mountains of metal and death. The message was clear. Even in negotiation, the Empire was ready to destroy. Even in discussion, the Empire was in control. Teo sat in one of the comfortable chairs. He wore his same simple dark suit. Next to him sat Dr. Haywan, who carried a small technical case, and Lieutenant Jiwoo, who carried nothing but a data pad and the absolute confidence of someone who knew something that everyone else did not. Across from them sat the Imperial negotiating team. At the head was a Vexthari named Kess, an officer of the Empress with 1,000 years of experience in demanding surrender from weaker species. Behind him stood 3 other negotiators, each one an expert in their field. Each one had conquered civilizations. Each one had heard the pleas of dying worlds. To them, this negotiation was a formality. The result was already decided. "We will begin," Kess said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Earth will provide a full list of all your territories, military installations, and scientific research centers. You will provide the locations of all your resources and the names of all your leaders. You will hand over all advanced technology. The Empire will decide who lives and who dies among your population. This is not a negotiation. This is the description of your surrender." Teo smiled gently. "I appreciate your clarity," he said, "but I believe we have some different ideas about what fair terms might look like." Kess looked confused. In his 1,000 years of negotiation, he had never heard such words. Every species understood that when the Galactic Empire demanded surrender, the only response was to obey. "I am not interested in your ideas," Kess said. "I am interested in your surrender." "Then we have a problem," Teo said calmly, "because I am not here to surrender. I am here to negotiate, and there is a difference." He opened a document on his own data pad. The Galactic Convention of Peaceful Relations, signed 3,000 years ago by most major powers, states that all negotiations between sovereign nations must follow certain principles. First, both parties must be treated as equals. Second, the terms must be arranged so that both parties benefit. Third, the rights and lives of civilian populations must be protected. Those rules do not apply to us, Kes said. They apply to everyone who has signed them, Teo replied. And according to my research, the Vexithari Empress signed them 500 years ago, which means the Galactic Empire is bound by these rules. For the first time, Kes's confidence seemed to shake. Around him, his advisors began to whisper to each other in the high-pitched clicks and whistles of the Vexithari language. These rules have not been enforced in centuries, Kes said finally. Then it is time for them to be enforced again, Teo said. Earth formally invokes the Galactic Convention. We demand that these negotiations follow proper legal procedures. Dr. Heywan leaned forward. And we would like to discuss some specific technical matters as part of our negotiation. She opened her technical case. Inside were several objects that looked like they belonged in a science fiction story. They were small, sleek, and seemed to hum with barely contained energy. Heywan placed one on the table between them. This is a prototype of our new drive system, she said. It is designed to work with any ship, regardless of size or power source. We are willing to share this technology with the Empire as part of a peace agreement that benefits both sides. Kes stared at the device. His ancient eyes widened slightly. What is this? He asked. A gift, Heywan said. We believe that cooperation is more profitable than war. If the Empire agrees to recognize Earth as a sovereign nation with certain rights and protections, we will help upgrade the Imperial fleet with this technology. Your ships would become faster and more effective. Your enemies would fear you even more than they do now. It was a brilliant move. Heywan was offering the Empire something they wanted more than Earth's resources. She was offering them power. But at the same time, Jiwoo was doing something else entirely. While everyone was watching Heywan and the device, Jiwoo had connected her datapad to Meridian 7's main computer system. She had done this quietly, with permissions she had obtained through means that nobody would ever be able to trace. Now she was downloading the Empire's military records, their supply chain data, and their strategic deployments. What she found was more revealing than anything Teo could have hoped for. The Galactic Empire, for all its power, was stretched thin. The massive fleet that seemed so invincible was actually spread across 12 different star systems. The Empire had recently conquered 3 new worlds and was in the process of suppressing rebellions in 5 others. Their supply lines were long and vulnerable. Their military commanders were competing with each other for resources. The vast unified machine that everyone believed to be perfect was actually fragile, held together only by fear and the belief in the Empress's invincibility. Over the next several hours, Teo guided the negotiation with perfect skill. He did not demand much. He simply asked for recognition of Earth as a sovereign nation. He asked for protections for Earth's colonies and citizens. He asked for the right to develop technology without imperial interference. He asked for trade rights that would benefit both sides. To anyone watching, it seemed like Earth was giving up far more than they were gaining. They were agreeing to maintain certain trade agreements. They were accepting some restrictions on their military expansion. They were even agreeing to keep their new technology development limited to peaceful applications. But what Kes did not realize was that Teo was not planning to honor these agreements if the Empire attacked them. Teo was simply buying time. He was getting the Galactic Empire to commit itself to negotiations, to sit at a table and discuss terms, to recognize the authority of laws that had existed for thousands of years. Every moment of negotiation was a moment in which the Empire could not attack without breaking their own agreements. Every day was a day in which Dr. Hei-Wan's teams could prepare more ships. Every hour was another chance for Ji-Woo's intelligence network to grow stronger. By the end of the negotiation sessions, 3 days had passed. A preliminary agreement had been drafted. It had been drawn up with such care and precision that it would take weeks to finalize, and the Empire, trapped by their own need to appear civilized and powerful, could not withdraw from the process without losing face. Teo stood with his team as they prepared to leave Meridian 7. In the window behind them, the Imperial ships waited, patient and terrible and absolutely confident in their eventual victory. "Did they suspect anything?" Hei-Wan asked quietly. "No," Teo said. "They believed what they wanted to believe, that Earth was desperate, that we were offering them tribute, that we were simply a minor civilization trying not to be destroyed." "How much time do we have?" Ji-Woo asked, "before they realize what is happening?" 3 weeks, perhaps 4, Teo said. "They will begin to wonder why our technology is advancing so quickly. They will begin to question the strategic wisdom of these negotiations. But by then, it will be too late, because the other species will have already started to believe that they might be able to resist the Empire." He turned away from the window and looked at his 2 closest advisors. "The real war begins now, and the Empress still does not realize that she is already losing it." Behind them, the vast chambers of Meridian 7 grew quiet. Somewhere in those halls, the negotiations for humanity's future were beginning. But the real battle was happening in the minds of 1,000 different species, all beginning to wonder if the Empire was truly invincible, all beginning to hope that maybe, just maybe, there might be another way. In the deepest levels of Meridian 7, where even the official censors did not reach, hidden chambers existed that had been carved out decades ago by species who wanted a place to speak freely. These chambers had been used for illegal trade, for secret negotiations, for conspiracies and plans that could not see the light of day. Now they would be used for something else. They would be used to change the galaxy. Teo sat in one of these hidden rooms. The walls were dark gray, made of a metal that absorbed sound and light. A single light source hung from the ceiling, small and dim. Around a simple table sat representatives from 5 different species. Each one had risked everything to be here. Each one knew that if the Galactic Empire discovered this meeting, they would be executed. The first representative was Qural, a Quilac diplomat. The Quilac had once been one of the most powerful species in the galaxy, but 50 years ago, the Empire had invaded their territories. Now they had become slaves and servants, forced to work in the Empire's factories and fields. Qural was an old alien, with 4 arms and skin that looked like blue glass. His eyes were tired, but they burned with hope. Next to him was a being made entirely of crystal, who went by the name of Shift. The Crystalline Collective had fought the Empire for 1,000 years. They had resisted every attempt at conquest and control, but the resistance was weakening. The Empire was slowly choking off their supply lines, slowly destroying their worlds. Shift represented the last free government of the Crystalline Collective. There was also a Joltok named Vex, a small furry creature with intelligent eyes. The Joltok had never been powerful, but they were traders, and they knew every market and every secret deal in the galaxy. They had contacts everywhere and could move through the Empire's space without raising suspicion. A human named Minseo was there as well, though officially she was a military officer, not a diplomat. Unofficially, she was the leader of humanity's secret military development project. She represented the human military forces that were being prepared in hidden shipyards across human space. And finally, there was Teo. He was the smallest being in the room in terms of physical size, but somehow he seemed to occupy the most space. His presence was calm and confident, like the center of a storm. "We do not have much time," Teo said quietly, The Empress will send her attack in perhaps 3 weeks. When she does, we must be ready. We must be unified. We must be prepared to show the galaxy that the Empire is not invincible." Kural leaned forward. His 4 arms made complex gestures as he spoke. "The Quelac people will join you. We have nothing left to lose. The Empire has already destroyed our worlds. We would rather die fighting than continue to serve as slaves." Shift vibrated. A sound like wind chimes made of glass. "The Crystalline Collective will stand with you as well. We have hidden ourselves for 1,000 years, but perhaps the time has come to fight openly." Vex, the Joltok traitor, made a trilling sound. "And I bring word from a dozen other species. The Serpent Collective, the Metalborns, the Void Singers, even some of the more free-spirited members of the Vexthari themselves wish to know more about this alliance. The Empire's grip is weakening, and they can feel it." Minseo stood up and activated a hidden data display. It showed the locations of human warships, newly built with the advanced propulsion systems that Dr. Haywan had created. There were far more than anyone outside of human leadership had known about. Secretly, over the past 10 years, humanity had been preparing for exactly this moment. "Our ships are ready," Minseo said. "We have 40 new vessels equipped with the new drive system. They are camouflaged in civilian transports throughout human space. When the time comes, we can have them ready for battle in a matter of hours. Our pilots have been training with unconventional combat tactics that the Empire's military doctrine cannot handle." Teo explained his strategy. It was beautiful in its simplicity. The Galactic Empire was used to fighting enemies who fought in predictable ways. They were used to large fleet engagements where numbers determined the winner. They were used to enemies who would surrender once their situation became hopeless. But humans, Teo explained, would not fight this way. Humans would use speed and flexibility and surprise. Humans would hit targets that the Empire thought were safe. Humans would negotiate while they fought and fight while they negotiated. Humans would inspire other species to resist, not through speeches about freedom, but through the simple demonstration that resistance was possible. Over the next several hours, the alliance took shape. Kural would coordinate the rebellious Quelac forces. Shift would move the Crystalline Collective's hidden military assets into position. Vex would use his trading networks to supply the rebellion and to carry secret messages between the members of the alliance. Minseo would lead humanity's military forces in coordination with the other species. And Taio would do what he did best. He would negotiate. He would inspire. He would make everyone believe that they had a chance to win. "There is one more thing," Teo said as the meeting came to an end. "We must all agree on one principle. This is not a war to replace the Galactic Empire with something else. This is not a war to put any one species in charge of all the others. This is a war for the right of every species to choose their own path. When the Empire falls, and it will fall, we must build something better. Something based on cooperation instead of domination. Something based on respect for difference instead of fear of it." Each of the representatives agreed. It was a promise that seemed almost too good to be true. In a galaxy where power was everything, where the strong always dominated the weak, the idea of equality and cooperation seemed like a dream. But somehow, Teo made it seem possible. Over the next 10 days, the hidden networks of the galaxy came alive. Messages moved through secret channels. Ships began to position themselves. Species that had been enemies for centuries began to talk to each other. Not as conquerors and conquered, but as beings who shared a common goal, the chance to be free. In the upper city of Meridian 7, in the official negotiation chambers, Teo continued his talks with the Empress's representatives. He seemed to be making concessions. He seemed to be slowly accepting the Empress's demands. He seemed to be a weak ambassador, trying to save his people by giving them away to a greater power. But in the hidden chambers below, the true negotiation was happening. The true alliance was forming. The true war was being planned. Commander Minseo watched the reports coming in from the hidden human shipyards. More vessels were ready. The pilots were trained and eager. The weapons systems were tested and functioning. Humanity was ready. And somewhere in the darkness of space, Empress Zara sat in her palace, confident and secure in her absolute power. She did not know that 1,000 species were beginning to hope. She did not know that her most loyal officers were already thinking about defection. She did not know that the foundations of her empire were beginning to crack. She only knew that in 3 weeks' time, she would destroy the human species and reclaim the galaxy's natural order. She did not know that she was already defeated. She simply did not know it yet. In that moment, in hidden chambers and in secret meetings and in the hearts of 1,000 beings who had never dared to dream of freedom, the real war was being born. Not a war of weapons and ships, but a war of ideas and hope, a war that would change the galaxy forever. Deep in the darkness of space, at the convergence of 3 star systems, the galaxy held its breath. Above the planet of Kepler-7, the Imperial fleet had gathered. It was the largest military force ever assembled in this region of space. 2,000 ships, each one equipped with weapons that could destroy a continent in a single blast. 3 million soldiers ready to follow orders without question. An armada that was meant to be invincible. The fleet had come to destroy humanity and to crush the small rebellions that had begun to spread through the galaxy. The Empress had decided that the time for negotiation was over. Earth had failed to surrender according to the timeline she had set. Therefore, humanity would be erased. But as the Imperial fleet moved toward Earth's orbital defenses, something unexpected happened. Ships began to appear. They came from directions the Vexithari had not expected. They came in waves, moving with impossible speed and agility. The new human vessels, equipped with Dr. Haywan's revolutionary drive systems, began to dance through the Imperial fleet like wasps attacking a giant. They were faster. They were more maneuverable. They were unlike anything the Vexithari had ever encountered. Commander Minseo stood in the command center of the human flagship, the Soul. Around her, 1,000 screens showed the battle unfolding across multiple dimensions of space. Her pilots were young and brave, and they were flying like they had nothing to lose because many of them did not. This was a war for humanity's survival. All wings. "This is Soul Command," Minseo spoke into her communication system. "Execute Formation Delta. Move toward the Imperial Carrier Group at position 734. The human fighters responded instantly. They moved in perfect coordination like a single organism with 1,000 parts. Where the Vexithari expected them to be, they were not. Where the Vexithari focused their defenses, there was nothing to defend against. The humans struck at weak points, at supply ships, at communication vessels, at the things that held the massive fleet together. It took the Imperial commanders several minutes to realize what was happening. This was not a battle they had trained for. This was not a conflict that their 10,000 years of military tradition had prepared them for. The humans did not fight in lines. They did not respect the rules of engagement that all civilized species supposedly followed. They attacked from unexpected angles. They used their speed to confuse and overwhelm. They fought like they believed they could win, which was something that no enemy of the Empire had believed in centuries. But the human fleet was still vastly outnumbered. For every Imperial ship they damaged, 10 more Imperial ships attacked them. For every human victory, there was a price in human lives. Lieutenant Ji Wu, watching the battle from a secure command station in human space, felt her heart breaking as she saw the casualty reports coming in. Hundreds of humans were dying. Thousands of human soldiers were being lost. But at the same moment, something else was happening in other parts of the galaxy. The Quilac forces, long suppressed and tortured by the Empire, rose up in rebellion. They attacked Imperial installations in 17 star systems. The crystalline collective emerged from hiding and began to systematically destroy the Empire's communication networks. The Joltak traders, using their secret knowledge of hidden routes and passages, began to break up the Empire's supply lines. In the battle above Kepler-7, the tide began to shift. The Imperial fleet was no longer fighting just humanity. They were fighting a coalition of species that had finally decided they were willing to die rather than continue to serve. And they were discovering something new, that courage, when multiplied across thousands of beings, could be stronger than fear. Dr. Hei-Wan, watching from her observation post, tracked the battle's progression. She saw something that made her smile. The human pilots, despite being outnumbered, were actually beginning to push the Imperial forces back. They had learned from the first waves of battle. They had adapted their tactics. They had become more effective with every minute that passed. This was the essence of humanity, Hei-Wan thought. Not strength or size or numbers, but the ability to learn and adapt and get better. The ability to take a hopeless situation and find a way to win. An Imperial battleship, one of the largest warships in existence, attempted to ram one of the human frigates. The Imperial captain believed that sheer size and mass could overcome human cleverness. He was wrong. The human captain saw the attack coming and used the new drive system to simply move out of the way. Then 3 more human ships attacked the battleship from positions where it could not defend itself. The great ship exploded in a fireball that was visible even from the planet's surface. It was a psychological turning point. For the first time in recorded history, a large Imperial warship had been destroyed by a smaller, weaker enemy. For the first time in 10,000 years, the idea that the Empire was invincible had been proven false. The Imperial fleet began to break formation. Commanders who had never experienced real resistance began to panic. Soldiers who had been trained their entire lives to follow orders without question suddenly began to question whether those orders made sense. Why were they dying for an empress who had made a mistake? Why were they sacrificing themselves for an empire that was no longer winning? Teo, watching from Earth's orbital station, sent a message directly to Empress Zara. "Your forces are being defeated," he said calmly. "Your fleet is breaking apart. Your allies are rebelling. It is not too late to negotiate peace. We can end this bloodshed if you are willing to listen." For a long moment, there was no response. Then the Empress herself appeared on the communication channel. Her ancient face was twisted with rage. "You have committed an act of war against the Galactic Empire," she said. "You have turned the galaxy against us. For this, humanity will suffer for 10,000 years. "No," Teo said quietly. "I have shown the galaxy that the Galactic Empire is not invincible. I have shown them that another way is possible, and now I am offering you a choice. You can continue to fight and lose everything. Or you can accept the new reality and help build something better." The Empress did not respond. Instead, she gave orders to her remaining fleet. But her officers did not follow those orders with the same enthusiasm they once had. They began to disobey. They began to surrender. They began to refuse to fight. Above Kepler-7, the Imperial fleet fell apart. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Some ships jumped to hyperspace and fled. Some ships shut down their weapons and signaled their surrender. Some ships, their captains having made the choice to stand with the rebellion, turned and began firing on the remaining Imperial forces. By the time the battle ended, 23 hours later, the Galactic Empire's grip on its former territories had been broken, not everywhere and not completely. But the myth of invincibility had been shattered, and that, Teo knew, was the beginning of the end. In the command center of the soul, Minseo allowed herself a moment of exhaustion. Thousands of her people had died today, but millions of her people had been saved. Earth had survived. Humanity had proven itself not through overwhelming force, but through courage and adaptability and the refusal to accept defeat. Dr. Hei-Wan sent a message from her research station. The new drive systems performed perfectly. We can begin mass production immediately. By the time the Empress realizes what is happening, we will have hundreds of ships ready. And Teo, watching the images of the battle ending, the images of alien species celebrating together, the images of a galaxy beginning to change, simply smiled. The war was not yet won. The Empress would fight on. Other conflicts would come. But the most important battle had been won. The battle for hope. The battle for the idea that change was possible. The battle for the belief that the old order did not have to last forever. In that moment, everything changed. And no one, not even Teo, could have predicted where this change would lead.